Shelf your critical thinking. Put your critical thinking in suspended animation. Don't ask further questions.
No, I'm sorry, Bobby. I ain't going to do it. I ain't going down that rabbit hole, buddy. Here's what you got to understand. Critical thinking ain't going to help us in the battle against misinformation. Where'd I get that idea? Buddy, I am illuminated and enlightened. I'm reading the New York Times. They told me not to go down the rabbit hole. And you know what, Bobby? I believe them.
Don't go down the rabbit hole. Don't you do it. Critical thinking isn't helping. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Critical thinking isn't helping. Stop overthinking what you see online. Mr. Caulfield, a digital literacy expert at Washington State University, Vancouver, knows all too well that at this very moment, more people are fighting for the opportunity to lie to you than at perhaps any other point in human history. This could be true. Let that sink in. The natural human mindset is a liability in an attention economy. It allows grifters, conspiracy theorists, trolls, and savvy attention hijackers to take advantage of us and steal our focus. Guess what? That is true. That is true. Grifters and conspiracy theorists and trolls and savvy attention hijackers will take advantage of us and steal our focus. That is true. And they come in all shapes and sizes. You might be tempted to go a little bit deeper than what you've been presented, but I want you to stop. Don't do it. Don't go down that rabbit hole. But Mr. Caulfield argues that the deck is stacked even further against us, that the way we're taught from a young age to evaluate and think critically about information is fundamentally flawed and out of step with the chaos of the current internet. I would have to agree with that. It is fundamentally flawed. Why do you think that is? He suggests that the dominant mode of media literacy, if kids get taught any at all, is that, quote, you'll get imperfect information and then use reasoning to fix that somehow. Wouldn't want to use reasoning, wouldn't want to use critical thinking, wouldn't want to apply questions and observations to a situation. We just need to look at it and believe it if it comes from a top shelf authoritative source like the New York Times or Google or Wikipedia, like we're going to learn here in a second. Mr. Caulfield walked me through the process of using an Instagram post from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He says, if this is not a claim where I have a depth of understanding, then I want to stop for a second and before going further, just investigate the source. He copied Mr. Kennedy's name in the Instagram post and popped it into Google. We're going to go to Google. So Mr. Caulfield says, hey, do you want to vet this source right here? Let's go to Google. Google will help us determine whether what Mr. Kennedy says is true or false, whether it's real information that we should consider or misinformation that we should reject. Look how fast this is, he told me as he counted the seconds out loud. In 15 seconds, he navigated to Wikipedia, another source that you should use to vet all information that you're considering. This is how the professional fact checkers do it. And scrolled through the introductory section of the page, highlighting with his cursor the last sentence, which reads that Mr. Kennedy is an anti-VAXX activist and, oh no, conspiracy theorist. Suspend your critical thinking. Your critical thinking doesn't help here. Just let Google and Wikipedia do your thinking. Is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. the best unbiased source on information about a VAXX? I'd argue no. And why would he argue that? Because he consulted Google. He consulted Wikipedia. He did what the professional fact checkers do. And that's good enough to know we should probably just move on. He probed deeper into the method to find better coverage by copying the main claim of Mr. Kennedy's post and pasting that into a Google search. It's what you know you can trust. When you plug something into a Google search, you know that what comes to the top, what Alphabet Inc. gives you from Silicon Valley, is the information that you should absorb and accept. All others should be rejected. The first two results came from these institutes right here. His quick searches showed a pattern. Mr. Kennedy's claims were outside the consensus. You know you shouldn't listen to anything outside the consensus. A sign they were motivated by something other than science. If it's within the consensus, it's science. If it's outside the consensus, it's not science. Within the consensus, accept. Outside the consensus, reject. Suspend your critical thinking. That's what this article's saying.